Well, it had to happen eventually. Donald Trump is grown tired of Pam Bondi. He has had enough of her failures. He has had enough of her inability to cover up. He has had enough of her screw UPS, her scandals, the way she just constantly brings attention to the Epstein files in an effort to do the exact opposite. And so Donald Trump has flipped on Bondi. And there is someone new fulfilling a key role at the DOJ. We are going to get into it all and how it's just the latest in a series of shake UPS around Donald Trump's failed criminal cover-up of the Epstein files. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work and it's the best Christmas gift you can give. Now, before we get into how Bondi was replaced, I want to start with a breakdown on the latest cover UPS that have failed out of the DOJ that Chris Hayes was reporting on right here.
Again, you could disagree with the law, but Donald Trump signed that into law. And despite all that, there are some really valuable pieces of information the public is learning from the files once we kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. Today, for instance, we learned that during Trump's first term, this is back in January 2020, an assistant U.S. attorney wrote an internal email about a review of flight records as part of the government's case against Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, who has subsequently been transferred to a low-security prison after talking to Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche. And this is what the email says. For your situational awareness, wanted to let you know that the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case, the email states. In other words, during a period in which crimes were being committed. The email added that Trump had been on at least 8 Epstein flights. On one flight in 1993, he and Epstein are the only 2 listed passengers. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and then 20-year-old redacted. That seems like a justified redaction there. Remember what Trump said last year on social media, quote, "I was never on Epstein's plane or at his stupid island"? That appears to be patently false, right? We also learned over the weekend that Epstein had 10 alleged co-conspirators. This is probably the biggest piece of news to come out of these documents today. So in another email, this one from 2019, the day after Jeffrey Epstein was charged with child sex trafficking by the feds, an FBI employee asked a colleague for, quote, an update on the status of the 10 co-conspirators. Now, this email also shows the incompetent or possibly malign nature of DOJ's redaction efforts, or at least as yet unexplained. Some of the co-conspirator names were redacted, and that would appear to be a violation of the law under almost all circumstances. You can't redact someone's name just because they might suffer embarrassment or reputational harm, even though Donald Trump thinks you should. The law explicitly says you can't. But then, in the same document, some names aren't redacted at all. As Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said in a statement today, the Department of Justice needs to shed more light on who was on the list, how they were involved, and why they chose not to prosecute. There's also the case of a heavily redacted court filing quoting an Epstein survivor. That survivor claims that another friend of hers was one of the many girls that had sexual relations with Redacted. She confided in me about her casual friendship with Redacted. Redacted definitely seemed to have a thing for her, and she told me how he kept going on about how he liked her pert nipples. But in another data set released by the DOJ, that same document appears without any edits or redactions at all. And guess what? The unredacted name of the man in question is Donald Trump's. Now, it's not clear why his name was redacted from the other file they released. And remember, an allegation is not evidence of a crime. And in this case, it's not even clear she's making an allegation of a crime.
It is failure after failure after failure from this administration. And it's funny that when Republicans talk about this, even though it's not funny, that they're always talking about the PR, right? You hear this a lot from someone like Megyn Kelly. Megyn R. Kelly, as we like to call her on the show, saying that a 15-year-old girl, that's fine. That was her defense of Jeffrey Epstein. Real great stuff there. Megyn, I can't believe you have a daughter, fucking gross. But Megyn Kelly said that this is a PR disaster. They don't care that survivors aren't getting the justice that they deserve, or that the DOJ and Donald Trump and everyone in this administration is breaking the law, a law Trump signed, and their failure to disclose. She says it's a PR problem. But in many ways, although it's just kind of a shallow way of looking at it, of course, Meghan R. Kelly is right. This is a PR disaster. Pam Bondi has no idea how to message. And that's essentially her job, is to get on Fox News and then get off and then prosecute Donald Trump's political opponents. And she's done neither of those things correctly, which is why Donald Trump, at least on the messaging front, is replacing Pam Bondi. A new report from Axios details that the White House has begun managing the DOJ's account on Twitter, an effort to finish out the year and the Epstein file disclosure requirements set by Congress. So the ghouls in Donald Trump's White House, Stephen Cheng specifically, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but the most disgusting figure in the Trump White House to look at. And people might say, "Oh, Jack, it's Christmas Eve. Maybe we should be a little nicer on people's appearances." I am going to go ahead and do what would Jesus have done? And I think I would probably call, Stephen Chung a fat, disgusting fuck. Sorry for my language in on the special holiday, but it's just the truth. He's a ghoul, and he's a vile individual both inside and out. So, I think it's fine to say. But this guy is now running the DOJ's, I guess, messaging campaign at large. And what does the DOJ need to message on besides making sure that Donald Trump gets the PR that he wants around his criminally failed release of the Epstein files? That's what's happening right now. They're also admitting to us that they believe the DOJ's job is to protect Donald Trump and is to message better. It's not to deliver the transparency that Congress has required of them, that Donald Trump's own signature on the Epstein Transparency Act has required of them. It's to message. But that is Donald Trump's administration. He brought in people who aren't good messengers, but they're good to rile up the Fox propaganda outlet base to really get the Newsmax people, the OAN to get anyone who's tuning into Meghan R. Kelly's show or Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson. Those people are who they want to message to. That's why Pete Hegseth, the dumbest person in America, is the Secretary of Defense, because he goes on Fox with Will Cain, who's the dumbest host on Fox. I'm really just going off on people today, and he's all raw. Raw. That's his job. That's what they think this is. And so, Trump has replaced what he thinks the only real focus of the DOJ should be, which is to serve Donald Trump. And that is essentially what is being accomplished here, as he wants to make sure that the Department of Justice is fulfilling its one job, which is to message better for him. But what I can tell you, Donald, is it's not actually working. And Lawrence O'Donnell broke down exactly why right here.
What would an innocent person do? What would someone who is mentioned in the Epstein files do if he or she believed that he or she is totally innocent of any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein? Former President Bill Clinton's office put out a statement saying, quote, "We call on President Trump to direct Attorney General Bondi to immediately release any remaining materials referring to, mentioning, or containing a photograph of Bill Clinton." And there it is. That is the model for how you handle this situation if you are in the Epstein files and you believe you did nothing wrong. Please feel free to now consider all of the prominent names you have heard this year associated with the Jeffrey Epstein, who have not demanded the immediate release of any materials referring to, mentioning, or containing a photograph of that person. Donald Trump has never demanded that. Donald Trump has done everything he could to prevent that from happening. Jeffrey Epstein's biggest business partner, Les Wexner, has never said, "Release everything about me that's in the Epstein files." And he is not saying it now, after his name emerged today in a 2019 Justice Department email titled "Co-Conspirators." The email described attempts to subpoena the list of co-conspirators, which included Ghislaine Maxwell. A legal representative for Mr. Wexner told the New York Times that he was not a target of the federal investigation or considered a co-conspirator. He provided federal prosecutors with background information on Mr. Epstein and was never contacted again, the representative said. So I guess that settles that. if a lawyer for Mr. Wexner of Ohio says he did nothing wrong, that must settle it. I would love to have that lawyer for Mr. Wexner of Ohio join us here on this program and tell us whether he responded to a grand jury subpoena and whether he testified to the grand jury. I'd love to have Mr. Wexner of Ohio come here and tell us all about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which no one has ever been able to understand or explain. Mr. Wexner is so much richer than Jeffrey Epstein could ever have dreamed of being, and no one's ever figured out why Les Wexner would be in business with Jeffrey Epstein in any way. So what was that all about? And we patiently await Mr. Wexner's lawyer issuing a statement saying that they demand immediately the release of all information in the Epstein files about him and any photograph of him in the Epstein files. We patiently await that moment. There is no indication that Donald Trump was on the list of co-conspirators, but here's what Donald Trump said about Jeffrey Epstein's most important co-conspirator after she was convicted of sex trafficking with Jeffrey Epstein.
I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well, whatever it is.
Yes, he did see her numerous times over the years. New information from the Epstein files today revealed that Donald Trump flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane in the 1990s more often than he has ever admitted. In fact, Donald Trump has told the lie that he never flew on that plane. At least 4 of the Trump flights on the Epstein plane included Ghislaine Maxwell among the passengers Donald Trump was flying with. Donald Trump wishes Ghislaine Maxwell well. Donald Trump did not issue a statement today demanding the immediate release of any remaining materials referring to, mentioning, or containing a photograph of Donald Trump. Another email about co-conspirators released today said, quote, of the 10 co-conspirators, 3 have been located in Florida and served grand jury subpoenas. 1 in Boston, 1 in New York City, and 1 in Connecticut were located and served. 4 of the 10 are outstanding, with attempts having been made. 1 is a wealthy businessman in Ohio. The remaining 3 are currently out of pocket. The team is flying out tonight, tomorrow, to various locations in Florida to interview approximately 25 victims.
Donald Trump wanted to do one thing. He wanted to change the public perception around Epstein. And he was happy to change it in any number of ways. He wanted us to get bored. He wanted us not to believe the truth. He wanted us to move on. He wanted us to focus on Bill Clinton, which, yeah, if Bill Clinton was committing crimes and fuck Bill Clinton at this point, and it probably points in the past, yeah, of course. But Bill Clinton's politically irrelevant in this moment. You're the President of the United States, so we're going to focus on you. We're certainly going to on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Merry Christmas, y'all. I appreciate you spending a little bit of your Christmas Eve with me. I'm going to be seeing y'all tomorrow. So until next time, I'll see you soon.